As far as the eye can see, there's not the least bit of land to disturb the perfect harmony of sea and sky. Lost somewhere in the heart of the Indian Ocean, thousands of kilometers from the shores of Africa and the Indian coast, the Seychelles Islands were for a long time off the main maritime routes. Vasco da Gama, on his second voyage to India in 1502, did in fact sight some islands to the northeast of Madagascar, but he didn't stop there. The Indian and Arab navigators, the unrivaled masters of the Indian Ocean at the time, would occasionally venture into the zone of the Seychelles, but they never settled there. The Seychelles made their true entry into the history books at the beginning of the 17th century as a refuge for the pirates plundering the ships of the East India Company on their way back to Europe, their holds heavy with gold and spices. The legend of the Seychelles with their stories of fantastic pirate treasure date back to those days. Despite the accuracy of the hydrographic readings, the reliability of navigation instruments like radar, the GPS, and sounding devices, which would ensure safe sailing in the area, most ships still avoid the bank of the Seychelles. So we feel a bit like explorers as we approach the shores of Praslin. And yet, reading the logbook of John Jourdain, a navigator for the English East India Company who landed in the Seychelles in 1609, we can realize just how much the ecosystem of the island has changed since those days. January 19th, about 9 o'clock in the morning, we sighted land to the southeast. At 3 in the afternoon, we sighted a cluster of islands which seemed to be 4 in number. January 22nd, we found many coconuts, both ripe and green, of all sorts, and much fish and fowl and turtles. On one of these islands, within 2 miles of where we landed, there is a good timber as ever I saw, of length and bigness, and a very firm timber. You shall have many trees of 60 and 70 feet without sprigs except at the top, very big, and straight as an arrow. It is a very good refreshing place for wood, water, coconuts, fish, and fowl, without any fear or danger except the alligators. The May Valley in the center of the island of Praslin is a veritable nature sanctuary, reminiscent of the primeval forest. Unlike the rest of the island, this lush palm grove had remained basically unspoiled by human presence until 1930. Apart from the turtles and the crocodiles, which were exterminated quite early, the ecosystem of the May Valley has remained fairly close to what it was at the beginning of the 17th century. Today, 3 centuries after being discovered, there's a new kind of pirate landing on the Seychelles. Tourism has now become one of the main resources of the archipelago. Strolling through the market in the capital Victoria, you quickly realize that, in addition to the variety of skin colors, the thing that truly embodies the multicultural history and character of Seychelles society is, without question, the Creole language. The Creole Institute has its headquarters in this old colonial mansion. Their mission is not only to codify, but also to cultivate the color and creativity of the Creole language. All during the French and English colonial periods, the Seychelles were simply a territorial dependency of Mauritius. With the same history and the same language, these sister islands of the Indian Ocean forged close economic and commercial ties that were long maintained through the schooner traffic. Up until the beginning of the 18th century, the French possessions in the southern Indian Ocean were limited to the Île Bourbon and the Île de France, the names of Réunion and Mauritius under the kings of France. So the Seychelles remained uninhabited. Navigators were wary of the many coral reefs to the south of the archipelago, so they preferred to take longer but safer routes to the trading posts in India. The Arab navigators, however, had been crisscrossing the Indian Ocean for ages. They would take advantage of the winter monsoon winds to sail from India towards the African coast. Then, later, between October and May, they'd use the summer monsoons to make the return trip, and so they were probably the first to discover the Seychelles. Leaving Mahé, we set sail for Silhouette. Since the Arab navigators were sailing by the stars and following the rhythm of the monsoon winds, all their voyages were perilous. Did they reach the Seychelles? Only a few vestiges, an Arab name, Lance Lascar, taken from one of the early Portuguese charts, give us reason to believe that they may have landed on the east coast of Silhouette. For the rare incursions by Arab navigators or pirates, Silhouette remained uninhabited for a long time and its vegetation intact. The small plantations of copra, which is dried coconut meat, the source of coconut oil, have now been abandoned. The 200 inhabitants of the island have gone over to more profitable crops like cinnamon or, even better, ecotourism. Even though it's probable that Arab or Indian navigators landed here, there is no tangible proof, so there will always be a question mark. And the pirates of the Seychelles that were supposed to have landed here? Another legend steeped in mystery. Towards the end of the 17th century, the golden age of piracy was drawing to a close in the Caribbean. The pirates were tracked down by the great colonial naval powers, captured and hanged. That's when a few diehards set sail for the Indian Ocean. Spices, madras cloth, silk and porcelain from China, gold and precious stones, such were the treasures that filled the ships sailing from India and Ceylon to Europe. The French and English ships, which would sail through the Mozambique Channel between Madagascar and the African coastline, became the ideal prey for these new pirates of the Indian Ocean. There were an estimated 500 pirates in the region. Among them, a few celebrities from the Caribbean days, like the English pirates Captain Kidd and Captain Avery, known as Long Ben, and the Frenchman Levasseur, nicknamed the Buzzard. For about 30 years, up until around 1730, they would board any and all ships crossing the zone. Once they even attacked a ship of the Grand Mogul. On board, they found not only precious stones and 100,000 piastres, but also the ravishing daughter of the Indian sovereign. What did they do with their booty? Did they hide it away on Madagascar and certain of the Seychelles Islands, as was thought at the time? Nobody knows. It's said that when the buzzard was on the gallows about to be hanged, the noose already around his neck, he bellowed to the crowd, "My treasure goes to whoever can find it." And so the legend of the Seychelles as Treasure Islands was born. Le Ponant is leaving Silhouette and heading south for the Amirantes. Up until the end of the 18th century, none of the maritime routes used by the major colonial powers passed through the Seychelles. The Dutch chose to sail due east. Even though the route was longer, it had the advantage of avoiding the seasonal monsoon winds. The English sailing ships, after rounding the Cape of Good Hope, would sail up along the African coast in order to reach Ceylon. As for the French, they would strike out from Ile-de-France, then, after avoiding the perilous Seychelles bank, would follow the English route. Even though it was a Frenchman, Lazare Picot, sailing from Ile-de-France who discovered the Seychelles in 1742, it was several decades before French ships would venture into the region. The Chevalier Grenier, exploring the Desroches Atoll in 1770, noted down in his logbook, "January 10th, our men went to visit the island. We took 32 sea turtles and a good number of birds that we killed by hitting them with sticks. We learned that it was encircled by coral at about an eighth of a league out, that the reefs abound with fish, with sharks, rays, and that there were many turtles. The island is separated in two, east and west, by a channel that is high and dry at low tide." These coral islands are nicknamed the Oil Islands because of the copra and coconut oil they use to produce here. Most of them are now wildlife sanctuaries, where pleasure boats are not allowed to land without official permission. Like the surface of the atoll, the reef, relatively undisturbed by human activity, is teeming with an incredible variety of underwater life. Pralin, Mahé, Silhouette, the Amirantes, Cousin. You don't have to pore over mysterious signs carved into the rocks, or go digging up the ground to discover the treasure of the Seychelles. It's right there in front of your eyes, in the beauty of the islands, in the wealth of plant and animal life, in the nature, quite simply. It was not until the second half of the 18th century that France, at war with England, began to see the need of sailing the Seychelles route. Not only would the passage between Ile-de-France and their Indian possession of Pondicherry be shortened from 3 months to 20 days, but also this new route would allow them to develop the Seychelles colony. Marion Dufresne, in a letter to Louis XIV dated August 14, 1769, addresses this question. It seems superfluous to further argue the advantage of a shorter route to India, especially since it would afford a port of call in the Seychelles that could provide emergency aid and a safe mooring place. The vessels, particularly in wartime, could carry out repairs, renew their supplies, and reach India in 20 days of sailing. Mapped, measured, and marked, the maritime routes are now, at least theoretically, 100% safe. But the authorities of the Seychelles, in their concern to protect the environment, have regulated the maritime traffic in their territorial. Last port of call on this voyage, La Digue. This one island is the epitome of all the beauty of the Seychelles and has remained a haven of tranquility. Life and work go on at the same tranquil pace as in the old days. Maybe they're trying to respect tradition, protect the environment, or save energy. In any case, this old Zebu-powered press continues to extract coconut oil from the copra pulp. This jumble of pink granite boulders, polished smooth by erosion and thrusting up from the turquoise sea, has become the symbol of the Seychelles, a symbol that embodies the whole geological history of the archipelago.
The Seychelles was once at the center of a massive supercontinent called Gondwana. And at 225 million years, there was a split in the Gondwana continent which separated into two. So Seychelles, India, Madagascar drifted away from the African continent. And at about 60 million years, India separated from Seychelles, and as a result, Seychelles became isolated in the middle of the ocean, and India continued north and collided into Asia. And the interesting part as well is at 60 million years, that was a catastrophic time in the Earth's history. And as a result, there was a lot of volcanism, and amirant arcs, which is the volcanic ridges, were formed as a result of the separation of India from Seychelles.
Everyone pursues his own dream. And Emmanuel's dream has come true. He has found a treasure. These few pieces of porcelain and ingots of copper won't make him rich, but the experience has given him a more philosophical outlook.
Everybody wants to be rich, and it's easy to break open a chest or something and you get rich overnight. That's what most people are interested in, but very few treasure hunters are really interested in the history of our country or want to find something that could be good for our country. On the other hand, it's good for tourism in the Seychelles. It brings in tourists who want to see or maybe even find treasure themselves.